Hey, we got a woodshop project today. A friend of mine sent me this picture and asked me if I could make it. And I said, yeah, I can probably figure that out. So that's the project. So I started out with some scraps of pine that I had laying around. I forget what project this was for, but it was enough that I'd have the pieces needed for this project. Had to joint one edge here to get a nice straight edge for the table saw. Yeah, better do that one too. And of course now I remember to put on my hearing protection. So I'm ripping down a little more than I think I'll need here, but it's always good to have extra. It's inevitable that I'll screw something up and have to do it again, so having extra pieces is always good. And now I'm going to plane them down to a little bit thinner than they are, which is, I think they're right around 3/4 or maybe a little more. And I want to get them down to somewhere close to 5/8 of an inch thick, just so the end product isn't quite as chunky. So here I'm ripping down one of the boards a little bit narrower, and that's for the upright pieces. And I'm going to cut them to length here, and I'm just kind of guesstimating the length of these pieces. Look, going from the picture, I don't really know exact measurements or anything. I think I went with 3.5 inches or so, or thereabouts. And here I'm just going to use the first piece I cut to measure for the second one, so they're both the same. Yep, that's how they'll go. And here I'm going to make these uprights round like on the original, but I'm just knocking the corners off here so I have less sanding to do. I marked about a 3-inch radius on them, and here I'm gonna take it down to the line. Whoa, hang on to it. Sped this up here. I don't really work that fast. Wish I did. And here I'm drilling for the axle or whatever you want to call it that goes through there that'll hold the thread spool. And I drilled it too big first, going by a spool that she gave me for length, but the inner diameter turned out to be too big. She told me it would need to be a 1/4 inch. So I basically had to redo these and make 2 more. I got these stuck together with double stick tape, and man, that stuff's pretty strong. I couldn't get them apart by hand. But a little prying does the trick. And here I'm cutting the piece that will be the upright that goes under the thread spool on the front. This part here. This was a piece of dowel about 1.25 inches in diameter. It might even be an old closet rod. And here I'm working on a piece that will be the handle, and I didn't really have a thread spool to use like they did, so I'm just using the rest of that dowel and taking my pocket knife and putting some carving marks in it to make it look rustic and hand carved. And I needed a center mark on it to drill it, and I'm just rolling it on a flat surface with the pencil lined up on the approximate center, and that gets me in the ballpark. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm using this old clamp here to hold it for drilling in the drill press. I'm using a brad point bit here because I don't think I had a Forstner bit that small. Yeah, it came out okay. And I think I even got it pretty close to center. Not much wobble there. So to hold this after you put it together and slide it in, I just took these little tacks here that I've had around forever, and I put in the end of this, which is going to be the handle, and this is the spindle that'll go through there. And then I'm going to fasten some insets, some magnets in here that'll grab these tacks and hold that in there. And to mark that, these tacks are a little bit proud, so I can just kind of rub that around down there, and that gives me enough of a mark on there. I can see where to put the magnets so they'll line up. You could also just take Put some graphite on there, or lipstick, or whatever you got handy as a marker. And that marks it good enough to know where you're going. And I'm drilling here for those little magnets to go in. Again, using a brad point bit. And I got the depth stop set on the drill press so I don't go too deep. Perfect. So perfect, it won't come out. Drilling for the second one here, and I'm trying to get it lined up with that circle I marked in there. We'll try two first. I mixed up some 5-minute epoxy to stick in there, and that should hold them in okay, I think. Those things are so small, they're kind of hard to handle, especially for fumble fingers like me. And if you get them anywhere near each other, they immediately snap together. Strong little magnets. And as soon as I got that one near the hole, it popped right over to the other one. This is going to be fun. Oh, we got her. That should hold, I would think. They're not directly across from one another, but should be close enough. Let's see. That should be enough to hold it in there. I made it so you can twist it and pull it out to break the magnets loose. That should work. Later on, I added two more. And here I'm drilling the base for the little piece of dowel that sticks up and holds the thimble. This is another piece of scrap pine I had laying around, and this was planed down to about a 1/2 inch thick, which was perfect for this piece that will be the backer for the pincushion. I drilled it part way through the front, then flipped it over and drilled the rest the other way to eliminate tear out. a little edge cleanup on the disc sander and it'll be good to go. Cutting off a little piece of dowel here that will be that thimble holder, and that'll go in that hole I drilled in the base. So I kind of debated on how to attach these, whether to just glue them and clamp them or use glue and brad nails. I ended up and opted for glue and screws. Pre-drilled and countersunk the holes for the screws. And I'm using a 1-2-3 block here just to clamp it together and hold it square. It turned out to be a good distance apart, 3 inches apart. So that worked out. I'm just kind of lining it up by eye here, and then I'm going to use this other clamp to hold it to the base so I can flip it over and put the screws in. I didn't have any modern screws, but I had these old-timey flathead slotted wood screws that's been sitting around for years. So I figured I'd use those. And right here you'll see why nobody uses these anymore. It's hard to keep your screwdriver in there and lined up without it popping out like that. And that. But eventually I got it. We're going to go a little fast here because I'm sure you don't want to watch me screwing these in normal speed. I got them in place so I could take the clamps off, but there was a bit of a gap, so I had to tighten the screws down a little more. And once I torqued them down a little bit, it closed up the gaps real nice. I'm keeping the 1-2-3 block in there just to give it some support while I'm reefing on it here with the screwdriver and manipulating it around and working on it. If you're not familiar with 1-2-3 blocks, they're really a machinist tool, but they come in pretty handy around the woodshop also. Gluing in the shaft that runs through the center there and holds the thread spool. Looks fairly straight. I'll give it a test run here. Hey, it fits. Gluing in that thimble holder. It's actually straighter than it looks on video. And I'm trying to decide here whether I want to just use glue and clamp on this thing. I ended up going glue and screw again, just like I did for the uprights. I just lined it up by eye, and then I'm drilling down through the base. I moved it over to the edge here because I didn't want to drill into my high quality bench top here. And then hold it over the edge there with the spacer in place and drill up from the bottom to drill into that for the screw. I countersunk that hole too, but didn't get that on video. Screwed the screw in far enough so it was just sticking out a bit and I could feel the hole after I screwed it in a little more here. There we go. And then screwed it in the rest of the way. Always satisfying when you get down there and it pulls that gap out and pulls it down tight. Just a little bit more. A little bit of glue cleanup here. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to attach this pin cushion thingy. And I guess we'll just use magnets again. This time a little bit bigger magnet to hold that pin cushion, and I used a Forstner bit to drill out for that, and here I'm just cleaning up the hole a little bit. Put the magnet in a little above the center there so the pin cushion will kind of hang from it. And I'm not going to use any epoxy to hold this in. The screw should do it. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the screw in, and it's always fun dealing with magnets because they want to grab everything. I'm going to put this screw in part way to start the thread or establish the thread in the wood. And then I'm going to take the screw back out because the screw, as you'll see here in a second, is just about as long as the thickness of that wood. So I didn't want it to poke out the back. So after I got that thread established, I'm going to take that screw over and grind it down a little bit, grind the point off of it to shorten it up so there's no way it'll come out the back. See, it's about the same length as the thickness of that wood. So now with that screw shortened, I can attach it permanently and it'll be good to go and the screw won't come out the back. So I'm going to use a large headed screw to for the magnet to hold on to. After I got it in there, I put it on there to try it, and it was a little wobbly, so I decided to put another screw in to kind of hold it straight. I'm not worried about getting it flush because the fabric for the pincushion will go around the back and get stapled to the back of it, so it needs a little room for that. But it's looking straighter with that second screw in there. So now I have to attach the thread spool on top of that spacer there, which is the little scissors holder from the original. And I would have used a wood spool here, but this plastic one is the one she gave me, so I'm just gluing it on with the epoxy. And of course I gotta slop it over the edge. And right in the front too. Oh well, this isn't fine furniture. So that's pretty much it. She's going to put on the fabric and foam pad for the pincushion, so I didn't have to do that part. The only thing left to do is put a little finish on it. The original had that thing in the center there in between the thimble and the scissors holder, but I didn't know what that was and she didn't either, so she said not to worry about it. And I hope she likes it. It looks a little bit like the original, or a crude imitation at least. So I think that thing is called a sewing caddy, and here it is with a little stain on it. And if you know anyone, or maybe someone in your family that sews, might make a good present. It was a fun little project to build, and I'll be doing more in the wood shop in the near future, so come on back if you want to see that, and might be some other stuff that comes up around here too. See ya.